Welcome to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the podcast, everybody. We have with us today Mr. Lionel Lariviere. He is a third-degree black belt in Tang Soo Do. He's a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and he's the head instructor of Ripple Effect Martial Arts in Middleburg, Florida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We had just been having a little conversation about names and family names, and there was something really interesting I learned about Mr. L, as he's known in the school. And can you tell me about that again? Your last name is Laviere, but there's more to it.
Yeah, so if you look at my name spelled out, it's got like 9 letters in my last name. And my grandfather is French, and when he came to America, the way you pronounce my name is actually even my first name is Lionel. So it's Lionel Lariviere. And when he came to America, they were like, no, we're going to shorten it and make it more digestible for the American people. So it was Lionel Lariviere. They changed it to Lionel Lariviere. And that happened also with my grandmother, who was from Italy. Her last name was Cortezarita. And it was basically, they were like, no, we're going to shorten that down to Cortez. So it's kind of like making it more digestible. And that's what I kind of do here at the studio, because a lot of the students and a lot of the parents kind of just know me as Mr. L at that point, just to make it, easy on everybody.
You also said something that was really interesting. Before you earn a black belt in the tradition of our schools, you generally call people by Mr. or Mrs., Miss, Mr., Mrs., and their first name. And then upon earning a black belt, it's Mr., Miss, Mrs. with the last name. And then in your case, you also have kind of a nickname. And what happened there?
So when I first came on as the head instructor, we were kind of still going in between the first and the last names. So some students knew me as Mr. Lionel, some students knew me as Mr. Laviere, and some students knew me as Mr. L. So like some of the parents and some of the students like thought there was like 3 of me, I guess, running around the studio. Like I called up a parent one time and I was talking to him and I was like, this is Mr. L, blah, 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 doing a great job in class. And they were like, yeah, we know. We just talked to Mr. Laviere about this yesterday. And I go, yeah, I know. I'm Mr. Laviere. And they were like, well, who's Mr. L? And I'm like, well, I'm Mr. L. And they're like, well, who's Mr. Lionel? I was like, well, I'm Mr. Lionel too. Like I'm all 3 of them, together. So that's when we started really kind of cracking down on that and using the last names and things like that.
In terms of origins and your style, the style that you started studying, when did you start studying martial arts?
So I started training when I was 12 years old in Taekwondo. I think that a lot of people, especially where I grew up at, martial arts wasn't really big. It was more football, it was more baseball, more soccer, more, all that. Kind of like the origins to that, to me starting. And if you I know they can't see it on the podcast, but if you look over here on my side, I have a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So when I was like little, that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle so bad. So whenever I talked to my parents about putting me in karate, they looked around to see what was available, and the only thing that was really available in our area was Taekwondo. And I jokingly call Taekwondo, which I love it, but I kind of jokingly call it's like the gateway karate. It's like that's a lot of people. That's what they had the first accessibility to, was doing Taekwondo, and then they kind of move off to whatever direction they go, or they stay with Taekwondo. I really moved to Tang Soo Do because when my dad got stationed here at NAS in Jacksonville, I've met Master Lappin. There was really no Taekwondo over here, and she was just starting the studio. So that kind of just fell into place there.
What was that like, being a middle schooler and probably a little, it's an awkward stage. And what is it like coming into a martial arts school and that kind of community?
I actually talked to the kids about this too. It's funny you asked that. Where I went to classes with Taekwondo, they didn't have kids classes. They only had adult classes. So it was like you got thrown in with at 12 years old, you were thrown in with the adults. And I think that's what kind of really toughens you up quite a bit, because, the adults are in there and kicking and punching and, doing everything like, full power. And you're holding this bag as a 12-year-old kind of shaking. And like, you get that hit and it knocks you down to the ground. But, you get taught to get back up and keep going. So there was many times where I was scared. There was many times where I would, just be really intimidated. But I think that also really kind of, for a lack of better terms, makes a man out of you. You are put into that fire. You are kind of given that hardship that you have to push through. And I love it. Hope I wouldn't have done it any other way. And plus, my dad was in the army, so we didn't get a lot of slack from him. It was, get back in there, get back to work, work hard and achieve the goals.
Are there any kind of comparisons with going into a 4-year, a 6-year martial arts program, black belt program, and going into the military, that some of the disciplines in the culture, there is something in common about those, would you say?
Absolutely. My father was actually from a very, very small town in Florida, more on the panhandle side. And that's really why he went into the military to start off with, because he wanted to see the world. He was from a small town. He wanted to get out of that town. And he actually went into the army. He was 101st Airborne. And, he went all around doing jumps and getting ready for, they actually got him ready for Vietnam. But he didn't go to Vietnam. He like just hit the cutoff. So they sent him to Alaska and to start getting ready for the Cold War, I guess you could say. The stories that he would tell me about like the perseverance that they were put through, especially as airborne, there's a little bit more that's expected out of you. And how that kind of correlates with karate, in my opinion, is that martial arts is very militaristic kind of in its nature. Obviously we're not going into combat. We're not teaching children or students, to go out there and go into combat, but we are teaching them discipline, and we're teaching them respect, and we're teaching them courtesy and courage and all of those things that help them out in the future. And they don't even know, half of them don't even know that they're learning it right now, right? They're learning that and they're going to see it in the future as they get older.
Earning a black belt, it is amazing to look back on what you have learned that you didn't know you were learning. Just like you said, can you talk about perseverance in the martial arts, and where you've seen perseverance in students that you've admired, what you need in terms of perseverance and what you learn?
Yes, sir. So every student's a little bit different, as you probably already know, and any instructor listening to this or any student listening to this, every student is a little bit different. You have your students that are like naturally God-given, talented. They have that natural athleticism to them. And then you also have your students that they struggle and they try a little bit harder. But what we also see on the reverse side of that is that we see those students that are naturally gifted athletically. Sometimes they might falter in schooling, the academics, right? And then those that are not naturally athletic, they excel at that. So no matter, if it's in the studio or outside the studio, I think everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses and everything that they can work on and need to work on. But we see perseverance here every single solitary day. Perseverance is a big one that we teach here, especially when we're going through our black belt testing cycle. That is a big one. We're pulling together as a team. We're pushing them a little bit harder than they've normally been pushed before, but it is to get them ready for that test.
I love how you mentioned pushing them as a team, and teamwork isn't necessarily somebody who's new to the martial arts or black belt program think about. It's almost like a, tennis versus a basketball team. It's all up to me as an individual to persevere and earn the black belt, but there is teamwork involved. Can you talk about that?
So with the teamwork, like in going for black belt, when they're in the black belt testing cycle, it's just, one, holding everybody accountable. If you see that somebody is faltering in a good way, in a nice way, in a respectful way, it's like, hey, I know you can do better than this. I know we can all do better than this, and kind of lift each other up. If you see somebody that's having a struggle, just going over there and helping them out, getting them going. So, pulling them up and getting their spirits high. And then once you get to that black belt, as far as I know, we are the only studio in our region that does a black belt cycle that pulls them all together like we do. And you can see it at the test. Like at the last test that we just went to, you could clearly see who our students were and who the other students were. Not saying anything negative about the other students. Everybody did a fantastic job. But ours were just kind of like one cohesive mind. Like whatever they needed to do, they knew to do together and make it happen, which kind of really goes back to the military aspect of it as well. Is that, you have an objective, we know the objective, and we take care of the objective.
And you're not on your own. Yeah.
Now, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's something that I make everybody clearly understand here is that you are not on your own here. We are a family. We are a karate family, a martial arts family, and we're here to help each other out any way that we can, whether that be mentally, physically, spiritually, it doesn't matter. We're here to help each other out.
Speaking of helping each other out, I wasn't only a student, but a parent of a black belt student. And the help that I got from the instructors and from the other members of the karate family was just amazing and helping me not only in the school, but also as a father during middle school years and initial high school years. It was so valuable to me. Do the parents come to you and ask you to help with different aspects of their kids' lives other than karate ever?
Absolutely. So we see from 4 years old is the age that we start at, all the way up to teenagers in high school and just going into to college. I always jokingly say to the parents, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist by any imagination, but I can listen and I can help out the best that I can. So if a student is having issues at school, we could sit down and talk with them, figure out what the solution should be. I just did one a couple of weeks ago. I wrote a letter for one of our students going to college.
Yeah, a recommendation letter for
Recommendation, thank you. A recommendation letter to them. And, the mom was just so thankful for that. And I'm like, well, absolutely. So I think it really goes back to you practice what you preach. When we get the students in here for their very first class with us, their evaluation class, we tell them that, from this day forward, as hard as they work to get their black belt, we're going to work just as hard to get them there, and we're going to stay with them all the way. I jokingly walk up to one of them and I'll say, I'm not going to go up to Tony right here and give him a white belt and be like, all right, kid, I'll see you in 5 years. Good luck to you. Right? It's not that. It's we stay with them and we are fully invested with them from white belt all the way to black belt and beyond.
And what an asset. I mean, it is just amazing over the years of studying martial arts, working with instructors and other members of the community and pushing through to earn a black belt, to have you be able to say to if someone's applying for a job or to college and go, yeah, I can recommend this person. Here are the reasons why. Here's what I've seen them do. Here's what I've seen them push through. Here's how responsible they are. You're such a solid member of the community that people are going to look at that and go, yeah, this is a very strong weight in favor of this person.
Kind of what you just said, to piggyback off that, it really does mean a lot to us to stay connected with our students. Before I came up here, my son was getting an award at his school, and as I was walking through the school, I just saw a lot of students that come here, and they were like, "Hey, Mr. L, hey, Mr. L, Mr. L, hey, how are you doing?" And it was just like, not only will we have that connection with them now, but we'll have that connection with them throughout the years. And one thing, and I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but whenever the studio first opened here at Middleburg, I was an instructor here many, many years ago, like 100 years ago, it seems like. And a lot of those students that first started here that had reached their black belt, gone into their successful careers in the future, some of them I still stay in contact with, like Jared Manzi, John Paul Ayers, Leah Ayers, David Ayers. A lot of them I still stay in contact with, even though it's been now almost 20, 25 years since they started their black belt journey.
That is awesome. Yeah, I was taking the bus from the south side of town to the north side just the other day, and a guy got on board the bus and he was reading a paper, and like what was clearly a student paper stapled in the upper left and everything. And I recognized him as an old college professor. And I went over, I said, are you Dr. So-and-so? And he said, oh, yeah. And he remembered me. And I mean, 30 years back. And it was just such an amazing, he was influential in my life. And how powerful to know that you've been influential in the lives of others. What was your son getting an award for?
He was getting a reward for respect out of his entire grade, which is kindergarten. Out of his entire grade, he was picked by the teachers for having the most respect in kindergarten. So we were very proud of that. My wife and I both got a chance to go up there and actually eat lunch with him and celebrate with him with that. So
Oh, that's cool. There are similar kinds of awards in the studio. Even at the end of each class, often there's somebody gets called up front. What's that like to call a student up front and say, "Hey, we just want to introduce Johnny or Susie or something for having done this."
we do a lot of awards. I would say that my favorite one, though, is what we call our victory notes. And our victory notes are where, the parents fill out what they're proud that the student has been accomplishing. So maybe at the beginning of their training, they were getting D's and C's. Now they're getting straight A's. They maybe didn't have a lot of respect at the beginning. Now they're showing all 7 magic words that we use. That's probably one of my favorite ones because you get to kind of tangibly see that what you're doing is reflecting at home or at school or wherever they are. And then also black belt nominations. And I think any instructor would, but when we talk to our students and we tell them that we are going to get them to black belt, that's something that I take very serious. It's not something that I, kind of just like, yeah, we're going to get you to black belt, kid, and you'll be a black belt, and all right, just sign here and blah, 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 and everything like that, right? I kind of like take the mentality of Mr. Master Macy. Well, the first time I ever heard him say this, like I kind of put it in my mind and started using it too, is he hates losing students, right? He hates it, right? When a student leaves or a student goes, it's something that just kind of gnaws at him. I took that and kind of put that into my own perspective and my own mind of, yeah, it's like you should, I don't want to say so much take it hard, but at some point you have to be like, what could I have done to keep the student? What could I have done to make it better for them? So I think when they go into the black belt training and we invite them up for black belt training, you are kind of making that commitment to the student, you and yourself, that we're on this journey together. We're going to get the black belt, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Going back to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, do you have a favorite turtle or a weapon?
So I would say this: parents and students ask me all that all the time, and I go to it from the point of a parent's point of view. Like if you ask me who my favorite kid is, I have to say both of them, right? Which they're both my favorite kids. I have a son and a daughter. They're both my favorite kids. I love my kids with all my heart. So I always say every turtle is my favorite one. They're all so different in their attitudes and their personalities. They're not all the same. Everyone has a little bit different. So maybe like one day if I feel like a leader, I feel like Leonardo. One day if I feel like, like kind of just angry, I feel like Raphael. One day if I feel, kind of, smart or that I've really succeeded something difficult, Donatello. And if I'm just feeling like kind of crazy, I feel like Michelangelo. So, but I have taken on, so if you want to add on another one, nickname, some of the dads in here jokingly, because they know how much I like the turtles, they jokingly call me Master Splinter, which is the rat. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but the rat that teaches them and trains them to become ninjas in the future. And I kind of always laugh when they do that. But, they always say, even though in joking, there's still some truth to joke, so I kind of look at that as a mark of pride, is that I'm taking these students and doing the same thing. I'm cultivating them and teaching them what I know, and hopefully they'll turn out better than me. That's another goal of mine, is that they will always turn out to be a better martial artist than I will. Right now, I just hit my 40s, and I can feel myself kind of slowing down a little bit. And whenever I'm in class and I see like the 18-year-old and the 17-year-old black belts, and they're in there jumping, 50 feet in the air, it seems like, and I'm over here like just barely getting off the ground, I kind of think that like, I had a little bit of dealing with that, like, helping them get up to that level. But then I still try to push myself like I'm 20 and get up there and try to get up jumping high like that and working out like they do.
You're still way too young for Master Splinter. So Casey Jones, though. That's a great answer to that question of, I appreciate this about Raphael, this about Leonardo, this about Michelangelo, because to get through this program, to really study martial arts through to the black belt level and beyond, you can't just rely on your strongest faculty. You can't just be cerebral through the whole thing. It's got to get physical and vice versa. And how do you encourage those maybe underdeveloped or utilized qualities in a student who maybe feels like they can't break a board? They can do forms, but they don't want to spar, things like that.
So I have a lot of sayings that I use in here to help motivate the students. And I actually I got a lot of them from my father. And one of my favorite ones that I tell to the students is when they say they can't do something, I always tell them this. I'm like, you can do anything. You can't do everything, but you can do anything. And basically what I mean by that is you can break this board. We just have to figure out how you can do it, right? Like my daughter, who is 11 years old and she maybe weighs 70 pounds soaking wet. She might not be able to punch through a full board, but she could probably do a flying sidekick through one, right? So it's not that it's not impossible. We just have to figure out how to get that done and how to do it. Again, some of those students have just like that natural God-given talent. They have that natural athleticism. And the one thing I always instill with them is that that's only going to take you so far. Once you get to a certain point, you're going to have to rely on your discipline, and you're going to have to rely on your focus and your concentration. All of that's going to play a factor because your body and your natural athleticism is going to take you so far. Then vice versa, any students that might not have that natural athleticism, we figure out how to do it. We figure out how to accomplish this because there's more than one way to do something, and we just have to make sure that we solve that problem. I always like to tell them too that martial artists are problem solvers. We figure out a way to get it done no matter what.
Thank you for listening to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast. Find podcasts and more at rippleeffectmartialarts.com.